All right, let's dive into the super dynamic world of international trade in Bangladesh. It's an absolutely booming global manufacturing hub. But here's the thing, success here isn't just about finding a buyer, it's about knowing how to avoid all those hidden traps that can turn a great deal into a huge loss. So let's jump right in. I want to start with a huge number that really sets the stage: $48.28 billion. dollars. That was Bangladesh's export revenue for a recent fiscal year. That's a massive figure, and it really shows you just how critical the country has become in our global supply chains. It also gives you a sense of the sheer scale of the opportunity we're talking about here. But, and this is a big but, that massive number is really just the tip of the iceberg. See, underneath the surface, there's a much more complex reality. For every shipment that goes smoothly, there are others that get completely tangled up in red tape and logistical nightmares. And that's where things can go wrong, especially if you're new to the game. So let's talk about those hidden hurdles. In the trade world, a lot of people call them execution gaps. And the crazy part is, they're not usually these big, obvious problems. Nope. They're the small, seemingly insignificant details that get overlooked, but end up having massive consequences. So what exactly are these execution gaps? Well, to put it simply, they're all those little mistakes, the ones that seem totally harmless at first, that end up causing huge disruptions and headaches all the way down the supply chain. Let's break down what that actually looks like. Okay, so here's where the real danger is. And trust me, it is all in the details. We're talking about stuff that seems so simple, right? Like putting in the wrong HS code for customs, or a tiny mismatch in the product description between the invoice and the packing list, or maybe a single tiny error in a letter of credit. On their own, they just look like typos, don't they? But in international trade, that one little typo can delay your shipment, get you hit with penalties, or even block your payments completely. This is the real heart of the problem. So how on earth do businesses protect themselves from this stuff? Well, this is where the solution comes in, and it's a role that's becoming more and more crucial: the trade architect. And this isn't just about getting some extra help. No, this is about bringing in a strategist, a designer to build a better system from the ground up. Okay, so the official term for this is export-import consulting. It's a service to help companies plan and execute their trades. But that definition is a little dry, isn't it? It just doesn't really capture that bigger, more strategic idea, the idea of actually designing a system instead of just running around fixing problems after they pop up. And this is what I'm talking about. A really great consultant is like a trade architect. Think about it. An architect doesn't just fix a leaky faucet. They design the whole building, right? That's what a trade architect does. They design the entire system, creating a blueprint that perfectly aligns your business goals with all those complex regulations. They build a solid foundation so you can succeed in the long term. All right, so let's get out of the theory and look at a real-world example of how this works. We're going to take a look at a firm called Trade and Investment Bangladesh, or TIAB, because they're putting this whole trade architect idea directly into practice. And you know, every great architect has a name. In this case, it's M. Joinal Abdin, the founder of T&IB. With more than 18 years of really deep experience in this field, he's the perfect example of someone who has that unique mix of skills you need. You know, someone who can see the big picture and obsess over those critical little details. And just look at his career path. It really tells you everything you need to know. He's been on the inside of the big institutions that shape trade in Bangladesh, from helping small businesses at the SME Foundation to working at the highest levels of the Dhaka Chamber of Commerce. Now he's even fostering trade with a huge market like Brazil. This isn't just book smarts. We're talking about deep, hands-on, institutional knowledge. So what's actually in a modern trade architect's toolkit? Because let me tell you, it's so much more than just filling out forms and handling paperwork these days. Let's see how all the pieces come together to create a support system for today's market. Okay, check out this breakdown of TNIB services. Of course, business consultancy is the biggest piece of the pie at 40%. But look at this. IT services and digital marketing together make up a whopping 50% of their work. And that's the key right there. In today's world, you can have the best product, but if international buyers can't find you online, you're basically invisible. A modern architect builds your trade process and your digital presence. And let's drill down a bit. So under consultancy, you've got things like buyer-seller matchmaking. And notice, it's not just finding any buyer, it's about finding the right one. And then on the digital marketing side, you see SEO and Google Ads.
I mean, these are the absolute must-haves for getting seen in a global market that is just packed with competition. It's about taking a complete, holistic approach.
So, this slide really puts it all into perspective. On the left, you've got all those common headaches for traders. Worrying if your supplier is legit, dealing with quality issues, making those dreaded documentation errors. And then, on the right, you see the solution the trade architect brings to the table. It's all about replacing that chaos with a clear system, turning uncertainty into structure and risk into something you can actually manage. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it really boils down to a fundamental shift in how you should think about your business if you're involved in international trade. Here's the bottom line. Real, lasting success isn't about that one-off good deal. It's about building a system, a well-oiled machine, really, that lets you do profitable deals over and over and over again. It's about building a business that can grow globally without all the chaos growing along with it. And so I'll leave you with this one last question to think about. Take a hard look at your own business. Are you just jumping from one deal to the next, basically just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best? Or are you deliberately, thoughtfully building a global system? Because that answer, well, that could be the difference between just surviving and truly thriving.